Mixdown, in my opinion, is one of the most important elements to making a track. Now I want to say something. Mixdown is also referred to as the mix, and I want to stress something, especially if you're, like, say, just getting into music production or you're a beginner. There's a huge difference between a DJ mix and a mix in production. DJ mix, obviously, as most of you probably know, is mixing one song to another, and I'm not going to really go into the details of that. But a mixdown or a mix in music production is basically how, and keep in mind for this video, I'm going to go very simple. I'm not going to go very complicated. So a lot of this stuff I may be oversimplifying, but a mix or mix down is basically how loud are the elements in your track in relation to one another in both the decibel level and obviously the EQing and basically the spectrum range in relation to basically one another. So basically to explain this, a really good analogy, I think, and this is something I kind of thought a lot in terms of, okay, how would I explain mixdown to somebody who, let's say, is just starting with music production or doesn't know anything about music? A very good analogy to music production, or excuse me, with mixdown in music production is this. Pretend like you're going on a trip and you have a car and you want to pack your trunk full of like clothes, toiletries, other basically different things. How much stuff you can fit to that trunk is obviously a technique, right? Everyone has a different technique, whether you take a bunch of shirts and you squish them as hard as you can, stuff them in somewhere, or like say if you have a bunch of toiletries like toothbrush, toothpaste, shampoo, you put it in one bag, you put that bag in another bag, you consolidate and basically stuff them together. And your goal when, let's say, doing a big trip is figure out, okay, how much stuff can I fit in this trunk without ruining my shirts, without ruining my toothpaste, without ruining anything, but I still want to still pack it all in. So you kind of play that kind of Tetris game almost. You try to like zigzag things in and put them in the right angle. So when it comes to a mixdown, that's very comparable when working on a track. Is, okay, how can I fit all this stuff into the track? My synthesizers, my effects, vocals if you have, my percussion racks, my percussive elements, like kicks, hi-hats, etc. All these basic other things you want to fit in this track. Bass, obviously is a big one. How can I fit all these things into this track without ruining it? Because as you can imagine, if let's say you have too much of the bass and it's distorted, it's going to screw up the rest of it. Just like in a trunk, if you, like, say, pack too many shirts, we're not going to have as much room for, your shoes, or, I'm just making up stuff right now. That's where a lot of different techniques you will see on the internet come into play, where it's like, just like if you're packing, there's all these different techniques of how can I fit my toothbrushes in such a way, and toothpaste. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put them in a bag, and consolidate that bag, and put that in a different bag, and in relation, the same thing for doing a mixdown when, like, say, you have a bunch of different synthesizers and you're going to compress them and put them all into one group, just like you would do with toiletries. And that group's going to be routed to a return track, just like you take those toiletries and put them in a bigger bag, and then that return track's being sent to your master channel to do whatever, and then, So I'm not going to get, again, into all these different details, but really what it comes down to a mixdown is how loud different things in your track. Now can you fit them all into your track? That's also why sometimes, like say if you take two songs, like say one that's already been arranged, mixed, and mastered, and you take another one, you notice that the final version of one and the final version of another, one's going to be perceived, I'm not going to get the perceived loudness in this video, but the perceived loudness of one is way, way louder than the other one. Why is that the case? They're the same volume. Why is that the case? And the reason why is this one, and again, I'm oversimplifying this one, the person could fit more stuff in their track. They could figure out ways to compress it, just like you might compress shirts to fit in a bag, compress more synths and effects and all these different elements into that one track and boost it, after doing a good mix down and then after mastering, which I'm not going to get into either. Basically, as you can imagine, this can get very complicated. Basically, a mix down is basically, okay, I have all these different things, like you're packing, and how can I fit them into one track and adjust the low on one synth or effects or whatever, and in order to fit the low end of another one and stuff like that. So it's kind of playing that Tetris game like you would in real life when you're packing, but for a track. And I know I kind of bounced around and talked a little bit in circles in this video, but as you can imagine, I'm very much so oversimplifying this because, then you have to equate with mastering and EQing properly and compressing techniques and using multiband to make sure certain frequencies don't, clip or all these different things. So there's a lot of different elements, as you can imagine, in music production in a whole. But when it comes to the mixdown, it's one of the most important elements of your track, something you spend a lot of time doing. But I just want to briefly give this kind of analogy into this brief video explaining what is a mixdown, and that's why it's so important in your track to spend a lot of time in your mix. So that your mix is clear, it's not distorting too loud, it's not clipping, just as if stuff was popping out of your trunk while you're driving. It's not what you want. Same thing with your song.